There's this one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Pacific Star. Yeah.
And then also this one too. Which, so those were the three. But she also, I know it's a bit off piece, but she also found a medal and a certificate that's very ancient, looks like it might fall to pieces, for my grandfather, my dad's father, for the 1914-18 war, which was really interesting, and a whole load of documents, which is like a treasure trove, opening them all, relating to my dad's family, a whole load of handwritten stuff about children, grandchildren, which will take me ages probably to go through and to try and determine whether there are any sort of descendants alive, a lot of names that I didn't know, all sorts of things, including some documents, birth certificates, marriage certificates, etc. for my dad's oldest brother, who went to Australia in the early 1920s when my dad was just 3, I think. And he had 2 daughters, and there was a birth certificate for one of them, who would now be 75. So I'm going to try and track down and see if she's still alive, because I can remember her visiting the UK in the 1980s, and I managed to find a record, a census record, tracking her down to Townsville in Queensland in 1980. I am going to ask my older brother, because being 24 years older than me, he maybe has a bit more knowledge than me on that. But it is interesting to think that maybe she could still be alive, and with very few links, I suppose, to my dad's side of the family, because they were so much older, and he was older when I was born. It's a tantalising thing, and I don't know whether maybe somebody like Martin, he lives in Australia, might be able to help me to see how you track down records over there. I don't know. I know he's in the UK.
Sophie,
yeah.
Sophie, I'll be seeing Martin.
Oh, are you?
Soon,
right, okay.
He's over here. Send me a message, and
yeah, I will.
What you need. If you can't do it, fair enough. But I'm perfectly willing to ask you when he comes to our meeting.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to find out. I mean, I've got a certain amount of details. I know this is all going a bit off the FIPO east here.
Barbara,
but
it's on the 11th, or is it the 12th?
Sorry? It's the 12th. We're meeting on the 12th. How far away are you from us, Matt, from Birmingham?
I'm in Leicester.
You're in Leicester. Okay. And I think, Keith, Kevin, rather, you're not too far either, are you? From
No, I just live in Leamington Spa.
Yeah, because Martin is actually, and his wife Jan, are coming to a meeting with us on Tuesday, November the 12th, at the Holiday Inn in Birmingham. If you would be interested in coming and meeting him.
Yeah, but unfortunately I'm at work.
Right. Okay.
When he came over, but things have gone skew as usual. But yeah, so the 12th. What time, Barbara?
We usually meet at about 11:30 in the sort of coffee bar area by reception at the Holiday Inn. We're there once a month on the second Tuesday of the month, and local FIPO relatives and whatever. And we also have a FIPO that comes. He's our honorary chairman. That's Ron Mockford, who is a fantastic chap, captured in Java and then came over and was in Changi. You might have seen him on the television a few weeks ago when the petition was going on.
National Arboretum.
Yep, absolutely.
I'll be there on the Monday for the 11th. Yeah, I'll be pleased to come. If you send me details afterwards as to where the Holiday Inn is, if you could, Barbara.
Yeah, if you come into Birmingham on the train, it's just at the back of Grand Central. You come out at the sort of the John Lewis part and go down and just round the corner, and there's the Holiday Inn just there. Going through the reception doors, and you'll find us.
Oh, I've never taken the train to Birmingham. I normally drive, but it's an idea actually.
Oh no, you don't drive into Birmingham.
Considering I'm a Brummie, born and bred, and I go to the if you like the surrounding environment of Birmingham every other week.
Has it got one? Has it got an environment?
Go into Birmingham City Centre since about 10 years ago. I used to go quite often, but nowadays I just go. No, I don't know where anything is.
No. Well, it confuses me. I only go once a month, and that's for the Bar FIPO meeting. And as you can see behind me, ready for next weekend, there's the wreath that I shall lay at our local British Legion on behalf of Bar FIPO. So I'm looking forward to next weekend's service, where I shall do my annual job of laying that on behalf of my dad and all his comrades.
Yeah, I always lay a wreath at, obviously Birmingham Star AGMs, and on the, I always lay a wreath for my dad and all his comrades, and I also do it on the 11th of November.
Yeah.
Not for anybody, just for me, if you like, for them.
Yeah. Oh yes. Well, I usually take a little cross with the FIPO badge in the middle. I take that, but specifically for my dad.
Yeah, do the cross with just my dad's name on, and I take a couple, because one I put on the Burma Star plinth. Yeah. There's an area there you can put the cross in. I put one in the Royal Artillery. I can't talk. Royal Artillery. I don't know what you call it.
Can I say, I know we've interrupted you, Sophie, in the middle of your important talk about your dad. But can I just say that when I was at the NMA in August, I didn't leave my dad's cross in my usual place at the FIPO one. I went round to the Royal Artillery, and it was a super one, and I felt that that it was good to leave my dad's cross there, as it may sort of engender some interest from people who may see it with the FIPO badge on it. And I got talking to somebody there who was a fairly recently retired part of the Royal Artillery, who was telling me about his work with helping those with PTSD. PTSD. Yeah. And that was really good. It made sort of a bit of a difference from just leaving Dad's cross at the FIPO thing there. I've also asked Keith, because the plinth, the memorial plinth that's by the Lichgate, is for FIPOs and internees. And as I always bang on about the Ramusha, I have asked him whether, as it's VJ 75 next year, that the Ramusha could also be remembered in some way. So, it's one of those things that I feel strongly about. It wasn't just about the FIPOs, it was the internees. And as Kevin, as you've read up on, some more now, the Ramusha, their lot was awful. Anyway, sorry, Sophie, we've distracted from your what you were saying.
That's okay.
About
I kind of sort of got probably to the end of it. Like a bit of a show and tell kind of thing there. It was just it was great. It just came all in the same 2 weeks really since the last meeting.
Yeah. But just saying, Barbara, it would be lovely if the Ramusha were mentioned at the service at Lichfield next year. That would be, that would be really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Keith is part of our group that meets every month. I shall sort of say to him, come on, you've got to do something to, we say that the FIPOs were sometimes a forgotten army, although I don't know that the FIPO were. It's probably the ones who were left behind to clear up after the war. We don't remember them. But the Ramusha are definitely forgotten. The internees, a lot of them are quite young and have stood up and said about it for themselves, still do. But nobody, apart from a few of us, and Patrick Toosey is the one who's always having a go at me about it. They should be remembered. They should be.
Oh yeah.
Well, the Ramusha and the Naga people and the Karens, all really were forgotten.
Well, the Karens did so much to help us as well, didn't they? Because they supported the SOE.
I mean, my father he had respect for the Gurkhas, but he had a lot to do with the Karens and especially the Naga tribe. He spoke very highly of them, and he was very upset, many years ago, the way they were treated. And I know he wrote to the I've got the letters that they sent back to him somewhere. He wrote to the British something, I can't remember now, to do with events that happened in Burma and India and that sort of thing, complaining about the way they've been treated. I don't know what sparked that off. And somewhere or other I've got the reply they gave him, which was that, well, as far as they was concerned, not the Naga people and the Karens and all the indigenous people of Burma who'd helped during the war have been honoured and thanked, and that was as far as it went. Which I thought was disgusting.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Sophie. Come on, Chairwoman, do your bit.
Barbara, just on that point, are there any organisations or any members of any of the groups that would have links with or are descendants of the Ramusha and
No, the Ramusha, as far as I know,
really not, no.
No, they were just left. They were deserted, left where they stood, basically. Some of them, I think, just stayed where they were and fitted in with the local populations. Looks as though Matt's gone off to find some information. So I don't know that here in this country, I don't think there's anything for the Ramusha. It's when you come across some of the stories of what happened to them and the way they were treated. You think that our chaps had it bad. Then, nothing touches what they went through. And a lot of them were duped into bringing their families with them. So there were wives and children there too. And they'd come on the understanding that there was employment for them and they were going to be paid. And there was very little. And it's tracking down where they actually came from as well, because the Japanese destroyed a lot of their records or never even kept records. So, there's a lot there. And to me, the more I research, I haven't got time at the moment because of my mum. When you find out what the Japanese did in China and places like that, and we all remember the Holocaust, but the Japanese had their own, caused their own Holocaust, and it's very sad. And you don't hear about the atrocities that were committed on the civilian populations over there. We remember the Holocaust and what happened in Poland, but we don't always remember that. But that's typical. It was, when today we can jump on an aeroplane and be in Singapore in about 10 hours. Forgotten how long it took us when we went. But in the Second World War, none of our families would have ever dreamt of going out to somewhere like that. They often didn't get beyond the shores of Great Britain, did they? So it was a different type of world, and we have to accept that things have changed. Shall we say for the better? I don't know, but that's it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But I assume that the Chinese themselves, they'll have their own memorials, I would imagine, because even today there's a strain between China and Japan. The relationships to even today is very strained. So I'd imagine in China they'll have their own memorials for them.
Yeah, although I think that because once the war finished, you have to remember that it wasn't really the total finish, was it? It was the over finally for Great Britain. But over there, you've got the communist uprising, you've got in Vietnam, what was starting there, Korea came along. There was conflict over there. And sadly, what happened in the Second World War got bypassed. I mean, I know when I went to Saigon when to commemorate my dad, and I mentioned to our guide for the rest of the holiday about World War II. He had no idea about it. His knowledge of the history went no further back than the Americans, the war with the Americans. So people didn't get commemorated. In fact, because I've got a relative great uncle who died on the first day of the Battle of the Somme, I keep saying I'm going to go out to Belgium and that and pay my respects at Thiepval. And I was looking at the tours that they do, and one was to Vietnam, and I thought, oh, Vietnam, they're going to, do something for there. But no, that was to commemorate the war with America.
Yes,
So why on earth would anybody really from this country want to go and, I mean, we did it, we followed it, and we did all the tunnels, that sort of thing. And it's an amazing place. I'd happily go again. But I thought when it said that it was a battleground tour that they would include areas like where my dad was, but no, nothing.
Yeah, it was all America.
Yeah. In fact, Bernard, we were talking the other day, weren't we? We both said that when we do our discussions on here, a lot of what we talk about is the railway, and understandably, because so many more of the FIPOs were there. Well, I think Bernard would like perhaps if we had one of these sessions where we talked about other places, because, I mean, Bernard, your father is so well known for the Changi Cross, but your dad was in Japan, wasn't he?
That's right, Fukuoka.
So please, I think, Sophie, could you ask Ronnie if we could dedicate one of these meetings to non-railway discussions, perhaps? And then maybe Bernard, maybe you could do a bit about your dad.
The gold mines and the copper mines,
yeah,
and the steel foundries in Japan, which about 35,000, I think, mainly the British, Australian, and some Americans. About 2,000, 3,000 Americans were in. Some, of course, near Hiroshima, where they actually saw the bomb and had the effect of the bomb blast. Luckily, they were far enough away not to be affected. But there's lots of stories there that people are unaware of. I mean, a lot of people are unaware of the fact that they worked in the mines, mining copper, mining coal, mining the iron ore. And then they worked in the steel foundries. They also worked on the docks. They also worked about, I think it's 1,200 Americans worked in the salt mine. So there's lots of places and lots of stories. Yes, I think we should.
We should do it.
Not avoid it or not talk about the railways, because they are in everybody's mind.
That's it, but to focus on something different.
Yeah, there's so many different parts. I mean,
yeah, even down to the contrast of we always associate people working on the railway in the intense heat. Some of them in Japan were actually freezing. They hadn't got any clothes. So let's have a little time where we think about the contrast that some of these FIPOs actually experienced, and perhaps we can bring out a different aspect of FIPO history when we do these, and maybe other people who hopefully will watch these videos will come on and join us, because they may think, they mainly concentrate on the railway. Well, come and join us and tell us, if your dad was somewhere else. So Bernard, hopefully, maybe you can do the start of that and do about your dad, because you've got the fascinating aspect of him with the Changi Cross, and then what happened to him out there in Japan. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I think that'd be a really good idea.
Barbara, when you were talking then, you mentioned Somme. When I joined the army, I was in Somme platoon.
Oh, right.
And I didn't have a clue what it was. I didn't have a clue. I didn't realise it was a place or anything. I was really naive. I was in Somme platoon.
Yeah. Well, as I say, my great uncle was 16 and he died on the first day of the Battle of the Somme, and his body was never found.
No.
So, from next weekend when it's so important, I remember him. And at the back of me, also behind the wreath, is I had it as a birthday present, a copy of my granddad's medical discharge. He was in France, and that as well in the First World War. So it isn't just sort of World War II that I go and commemorate. It's World War One.
I think in some respects we're lucky. He says in brackets. That I mean, well, I consider myself lucky that I've had the pleasure of going both sets of my grandparents. Both my father's father was wounded and injured in World War One, and my mother's father was an officer in World War One who didn't actually do a great deal, but less said about him the better. And then, of course, different relatives in World War One who fell. And of course, World War Two, where I had my father and my uncles and different people who fought in that. I don't know, we're lucky, but we've got a history that it's a verbal history we sort of grew up with and came to accept. Whereas today's children don't teach these things in schools, and for them it's all forgotten or new. They don't know much about it. World War One. Well, that was in 1945. No, it wasn't. It was in 1914 to 18. No. My granddad fought in World War One. I don't think so. Not at your age. And it's a shame, and it's beginning to. People are beginning to realise, I think, with 3J Day coming up, and people are saying, well, why making decision puts over the World War ending in Europe when it actually didn't end properly until not even August the 15th, but actually late September. And even October, they were still fighting in pockets. And of course, places like Burma and Thailand and places like that, the fighting, and China and Japan, the fighting went on for quite a while afterwards. And still, in Burma especially, it's carried on today. It's still, they've known war since the end of the war. They haven't had the respite. 75 years on, and they're still fighting to try and get their perspective and borders and lands back. But no, I don't know. I'm hijacking the meeting again. So
no, it's all right. It's interesting, and it is relevant because
I think do this. Sorry, Barbara.
No, I was trying to say that what you bring up is of interest to us all, because the one thing we all hope when we commemorate what our relatives and that went through is that we try to avoid these things ever happening again. And because our country hasn't actually been at war, apart from the troubles in Ireland, I think we've been very lucky for 74 years. And that's why our children aren't aware of these things, because conflict isn't really on their door. It may be among their peers with knife crime and that sort of thing, but that's a different sort of battle. But if we were at war with another country, then these children, would be flung into it. They've been very lucky that we've had 74 years of comparative peace, apart from our men being sent out to Korea, Afghanistan, and the Falklands.
With the First World War happening, and the children who grew up from that First World War with the people, and of course then the Second World War came along, which people didn't want. Because the survivors of the First World War thought, war is awful. Let's fight. But they had a Second World War, and I think it. How would I say this? But they had the courage and determination, and if you like, the patriotism to go and fight and defend their country. And unfortunately, I look at this modern world, which is so diverse, and people say it's so much better, and it is. You can't argue. We all live better, we all live longer. You've got wonderful things at our fingertips, which help prevent war, because or they can probably also stop internet and things like that. But we don't have, I don't think, if there was a war, I'm sorry, but I don't think there would be the people, the soldiers to fight it. We have a very small army, an Air Force and Royal Navy, as per what we used to have, and they're very limited in what they can do. And I don't think we've got, the youth of today haven't got the same want, or I don't know the right word, to actually do any fighting. They're going to go, well, no, I don't believe in fighting. Well, it's basically like what's happening with Brexit. They go, oh, you took away our rights to have European and all the rest of it. They don't know, they've never experienced the hardship. I mean, when I was little, we still had rationing, and there was bomb sites all over the place, and it was fun. But I grew up with it, learning that, okay, you go and play on bomb sites, but people were killed there, or houses, you didn't think about things. And there was all this paraphernalia of war that was so easy to come by. And of course, the people now, children today, they have pretend wars on computer games and things like that. And they can only relate really to Vietnam. Because there's an awful lot of footage and an awful lot of films have been made by the Americans about how brilliant they are and all the rest of it. And very few films about, oh, they lost it. But there you go. So I think we're a dying breed of people. And I mean, Sophie's little boy, and there's one or two other children I know, and take an interest. Otherwise, we have to infuse and support and try and expand what we do. So all in individual ways. I'm much better writing stuff now. Terrible talker. Continuing to help and support the memories of all generations, not just the Second World War, not just the Peace Pals, but we owe it to also remember the First World War and the Crimean War. And so the history is not lost. That's how I feel anyway. And I collect information from all over. I got some here.
I think it is important to teach it, Matt. And I shared a link there that I saw, and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe. So people just not even realising any details about the Second World War. It just shows that it's just being lost on the youth of today. So, I'm going to make sure that Liam knows about it for sure anyway. So
yeah. Well, if just going back to what Barbara was saying, just going back to what you were saying, Barbara, about the different subjects we could cover. I always feel that we could ask our community if they wanted a topic brought up at the meeting. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't want to come on the meetings, but they might be interested to have us talk about it. So
absolutely.
I mean, there's lots. I think there's a load of good people on the Facebook pages, both the community and the charity. They've got some great information. And if they want to come onto the meetings, but they could ask for it to maybe talk about that.
Yes.
We could bring. And going back to remembering about the Second World War and stuff like that, I just hope that the work we are doing ourselves is actually putting that down, setting that down for people in the future generations to see. I mean, these videos will be on the internet forevermore, hopefully, so other people will be able to see them. So we're doing our bit, if you like, to remember and keep this memory alive. So I think that's a good way to go forward. Ask the people on the communities if they want some topic that they would like us to discuss.
Yeah, and I'd be interested if there may be sort of not confident about coming onto this, but it would be lovely if they could just try and just tell us about their dad, because I love to hear about other people's dads and what they did. You know, this is it, because for us as individuals, it is the personal side of this that got us involved. It's knowing what our dads did, you know, and following it through and learning about other people's experience.
Well, I think
and
as a thought,
sorry, Matt, you've gone quiet.
I think as a thought, every single one of us individually started our journey regarding our fathers or our grandfathers to find out what they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's everybody. And I think for everybody, including myself, once I'd done that bit, it was like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I'm going to find that bit out. And it grew.
Yeah.
And then you find out your father, everybody's father's individual story is a fascinating case in fact. But it was only, there was only a tiny fraction of the whole picture. And as you start to widen it out, you think, oh God, you know, I can't comfortably say, well, I remember my dad, and I don't think about anybody else. I have files and files of these damn things. I've got a whole pool of information I've collected over the last couple of years regarding not just my father and my uncles, but RAF crews, both here, you find it in Europe and in the Far East, and Royal Navy. I haven't any links to the Royal Navy at all, but I do have a lot of information. I've followed it. And I think people like Keith and oh God, people who write it down and publish the stories of the fathers and everything else are helping a great deal to educate people, but you can't make them buy them. It has to be a switch, a lever. And I think everybody's got a relation or an ancestor who's got a history, and if you can make them aware of that, and then they can become interested in all the rest of it. I know that's just. Again,
I mean, for most of us, no, for most of us, our dads are just, you know, personal to us and not known. But you get people like Bernard. Sorry, Bernard, keep coming back to you. Whose dad is really very special to the history because of the Changi Cross.
I know.
You know,
I've got.
But most of us, you know, our dads won't be known, won't be commemorated or anything like that. I mean, if my dad had died, and I wouldn't be here talking to you, but his name would be on a memorial somewhere. Well, Dad hasn't even got that, so that's why, you know, I want to make sure that I do my bit, so I at least am able to commemorate him. But then, Bernard, your dad's bit out in Japan isn't known about, you know, so it's up to us to say, well, Bernard, your dad was known for the Changi Cross, but your dad isn't known for Japan, and probably neither of all the comrades that he was with. So let's do our bit and get them noted for that.
I mean, I've got Bernard's story, father's story, and it's amazing. And yes, it's a Changi Cross. But you find, if you go outside Bernard's frame of reference, his father doesn't really get mentioned. It's all Reverend.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Captain, somebody in the Changi Cross, and Bernard's father's little bit gets ignored. But just that single, like I said, every single person, from the man who carved the intravenous splints, not splints, needles to go in the arm so they could feed saline to the sick out of bamboo or bits of metal, or the person who developed the way to extract iodine so they could get that in it. Not for everybody, but in their individual camps. There's lots and lots of stories. I'm not detracting with Bernard's father story. That's an amazing story. It needs to be told. There are so many others, and they're all forgotten. Or did not. The establishment has tried to take away individual honours by saying, well, it was Colonel so-and-so and he was responsible for all that. He wasn't. That's about the officers in most of the Japanese camps. weren't thought of very highly by the men. It's the men who did the work. Officers did some work, but they didn't. They weren't. Their way of doing it was don't rock the boat. If the Japanese say don't make stretches, don't make sail and trips, don't do it. But of course, if people hadn't done it, lots more would have died. And very little is ever mentioned of the things that went on. It's just like, well, there were prisoners of war in Japan and they built the railway. Good, brilliant. But there was hundreds of thousands of others, not just soldiers and sailors and airmen, but natives as well, forced to work in mines, work in foundries. I mean, my oldest is long dead now. He worked in the steel foundry, and saying, if people didn't work, the Japanese just throw them in the molten metal. These aren't known about. Anyway, I'm going to shut up because I do tend to rattle on.
No, it's good. It's good. No, carry on, Matt. It's fine.
Just to say as well, I back in August, a lady called Elizabeth Hallett, who joined the last call, she put me in touch with a guy called Paul Murray, who lives literally just a couple of miles away from me. So we met up, and his dad was in Japan, and he's very knowledgeable about that. I did encourage him at the time to maybe join us, but maybe I could get back in contact with him, and he could do I could maybe try and get him to agree to do a short slot on his dad and his history, because that's all to do with Japan. And it was really interesting because it was something different to mine. And I showed him all my records, and he said, well, that's different to mine. He did at the time point me in the direction of a film that's you can get on. I downloaded it on Amazon Prime. It's called A Doctor's Sword. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that.
Oh, yes.
It's about an Irish RAF pilot from somewhere called Castle Townbere in County Cork. Sorry, I was just reading off an email there. But because my husband's Irish, so he thought it would be interesting. And it is a really good documentary. This is not a film; it's a documentary. And his I can't remember the name of the guy, but it's about his daughters following his journey, and they actually go to Japan as well. So and it would be really interesting. I think following up on what you've all said there, perhaps to have if people are not prepared to come on sort of live, I guess, and speak, because it is very difficult to do that. Especially when it's your sort of own family story and stuff. Not everybody's comfortable with that, but maybe there might be people out there that might be prepared to sort of pre-record something which we could then show as a short clip. If people are sort of able to sort of record it, maybe just one-to-one with one of us, and then that could go out, because it's all educating, isn't it? And I'd like to find out about, I agree with you, Barbara, that sort of personal sort of stories and stuff. It's really interesting. Yeah, and I'm lucky to have a certain amount of information about my dad. But I do see quite a lot of things coming up where people don't have much information either. And I think I've sort of realised that I'm actually lucky to have all the records that I do have, because a lot of people don't have them. But I think there are people out there with great stories, I think, that just don't really want to tell them because they're very personal. But they might be prepared to if it was done a little bit more sensitively like that. I don't know. So
yeah, I think you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
Or just like sort of one-to-one interview with or something, and perhaps somebody who is a little bit, not too worried about sort of presenting live, I guess. could tell it for them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're
right.
Know,
so we can all learn.
Yeah.
I mean,
there might be even younger people, like grandchildren, as well as children, that might want to tell stories, of their relatives.
I know my uncle never spoke about his time as a prisoner of war, and he did have a grim time of it. My father wouldn't talk about it either, but his story I can't find out about, because he never said his story. My dad would never talk about it. He just said, "Oh, I know about it." He used to see my Uncle Bob a lot. And Granddad used to say, "Don't ask him about the war," and he just gone back into his cottage, because after the war he just became a recluse, basically. He didn't want to talk to people and wasn't interested in anything except his garden. And my granddad said, obviously Bob had said something to him, and my granddad said, don't ask your Uncle Bob about the war. You want to talk about it. All I will say is he came back mentally a changed man, and physically very changed. And the little he said when he came back is what we have to put up with, is what we know, and that's all. And that was, he was a prisoner of war with the Japanese, and he was in Japan, and the Americans came and rescued them and brought them back, and that's all he ever said. And I've tried. He's the one person in the whole lot, and I can't find anything about him. And I don't know how he's managed that. He's not even he's not in any roles. He's not mentioned there, and I find it all very difficult. But eventually, I find out. But there's lots of people like him who never said their stories. We don't know what happened. They're individual stories belonging to that individual person. And if they shared it, and that person then shared it all to the good. But so many, when they came back, their experiences were so bad, they just bottled up it all inside. I know one particular person who came back, and he was also so changed by experiences that not only was he abusive to his family and his children, who were only little, but he ended up committing suicide not 12 months after being come back, because he couldn't take life. He'd been changed that much. All his stories are there, but they don't get passed on. So every person who can be encouraged to, like I said to my mum a couple of years ago, I said, "Mum, write down everything you can remember right from the go in the diary, in the book. Don't worry about what it looks like, but in the future, if I've got grandchildren, or if the children want to know, if they ask what did grand do, I've got your personal recollections." So I should have asked Dad, but Dad would never talk about really what happened to him, so I found his story out separately. But I think if everybody could just be encouraged to do that, I said to all my children now and people I know, just write down pertinent facts that have happened in your life, not for your sake, but for the generations to come, so they know what their father did, what their grandfather did, or what their great grandfather did, because you've got the personal recollections. Just people don't keep diaries anymore. Vernon, there you go. There's a man who does a lot of writing and a lot of recollecting, and we're grateful for all that you do and all that your dad did, and you especially for bringing that to everybody's attention. It's the same, Kevin. I've not ready to publish anything yet.
Matt, I lost my grandfather in the First World War, And there's a plaque to my grandfather in our local park. Now, my grandfather was only 19-year-old when he was killed in France. And I've had a lot of publicity about my father, the Changi Cross, and yet when I go to the Remembrance Day here, where I live, nobody knows about me. Nobody knows about the Changi Cross. It's all forgotten. It's like as if you got the Remembrance Day coming up now shortly, and you'll find there'll be a lot of activity, a lot of publicity about the place, and as soon as it's over, it's forgotten. And people,
the activity and remembrance all about D-Day or Arnhem and they should be remembered and should be told. But no one says, and remember the Changi Cross, and no one says, well, Changi Cross. I mean, actually, I'm gonna try and find a school to take this on. What it represents, what your father did, and what it represents. It's over there. It's in the church and it's plaques, and everybody in that country knows the Changi Cross.
Yeah.
But nobody else outside. I mean, I saw a comment not so long ago. Someone had gone on holiday to Singapore and went, do you know what? We found somewhere where there'd been a prison or something, and the prisoners had made this cross. Not who the prisoners were or when it was done, but they made this cross and they built this church around the cross. That's fantastic. He did it for the local people. And again, there again, they've been there, seen it, and didn't bother taking the fact that there's a bloody great plaque there that says what it represented, but they didn't bother to read that. He just read the local bits and pieces. Oh yeah, the local people made it. That's what this is why I get so het up, because all these little bits are the bits of a whole that make a story, and everybody can go on the bridge over the River Kwai. Well, it's the worst film ever made. Distorted it entirely, and Philip Toosey, who got his bloody name now, the actor. But he was basically on him. He didn't name him as that. That was who it's supposed to be. His story was completely different. And everybody remembers the hype. No one remembers the facts, unless it's unless it's on our doorstep. Or you can go to France. You can go to Germany. You can see its castle. We can see the. I'm not looking at concentration camps and anything else, but there's a big deal made of all that because it was on our doorstep. And that's why it's like the Forgotten Army. Everything else was, well, somewhere over there. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's not important. And that's what really gets my goat, because, yes, we celebrate D-Day in the war in Europe, but as far as I'm concerned, my dad fought in Europe till 1942. Then he was sent over to Africa to train African troops, and he was sent to India and Burma, and all the rest of it. And so there were a lot of people, and they were all forgotten. What they were doing, you can't see. You can't see the bombers and the damage and whatever, because it's outside the remit, and that's the way our government liked it when it ended. It was like, yeah, we'll concentrate on this. What people can see, what the population can see, and ignore what went on overseas. And that's why most of our returning FIPOs and troops came back to, you're back then, maybe it meant had been on holidays. Real fighting was going on in Germany. No, it wasn't. German, it's a hard war, but it was the biggest, the hardest war was fought in the SEAC regions. And people just don't know it.
I think what we have to take on board is that, of course, it was the biggest surrender ever when Singapore went down. I don't need to tell you, You all know this. So our troops weren't actually, the majority of them weren't fighting. They were prisoners. What they were fighting to stay alive, basically. And what they went through with the mental torture and physical torture is awful. I mean, I often think that some of the ones who died, forgive me, anybody this upsets, I think some of them had a merciful release from the remainder of the time. They had horrible deaths, but they didn't have to struggle.
If you gave up the prisoners, it's often commented on that the moment they gave up hope, it was said if someone
they died the next day,
you could virtually say they'd be dead within 24 hours.
Yeah,
it was a hope, but one day, take it at a time, to hope that maybe tomorrow it'll all change. But I think the Australians did different, the Americans did different. They rewarded their men. They appreciated what they'd gone through as prisoners. This country rewarded what our prisoners in Europe had gone through. Oh, very good, hard time. You fought, but one chap. Well, this is what I was saying about my uncle. The only time I think this has been in the early 60s, maybe the early 60s. Someone that said to my uncle, "Oh, you had it easy. You didn't do any real fighting. You had it so easy. The people were dying every day in Europe and everything. You were just a prisoner. You had it easy, just laid back and enjoyed the sun." And that's the only time I know that my uncle really killed someone because he just lost it. And luckily, the police weren't called, and it was a small village, so it was hushed up. But that was the attitude of a lot of people. Well, you've been on holiday, you were a prisoner, yeah, you were out of it. Wrong.
Yeah, I think part of that comes from the fact that our prisoners of the Germans, it was glorified as well when you look at some of the films, about Auschwitz and all that sort of thing. Their life were very different from that, and of course there was this about, well, they should have tried to escape. How can you escape from, for my dad, exactly, and having been on the river and looking at the go downs where my dad was, there was no way they could have escaped, from Saigon without standing out like sore thumbs, or just dying in the jungle across the way. You can't dig a hole out of there.
To do it, because you're going to have some hardships to face if you try to escape. Most were not in any condition to even try to escape, and they also knew that if they did escape, they wouldn't be just them. Other people would suffer.
Yeah.
And it was the fact that, okay, we're going to keep together. You're stronger together. If I go off in the jungle, I'm going to die anyway, so I may as well stay here and do my best.
Although I did hear one amazing story of an American pilot who was in with my dad, and I've listened to this. It was one of the verbal history things from the Imperial War Museum, and the person telling it told this American pilot who got to know, because they were slightly helped by some French and a local man who used to bring them eggs and things like that. But this American pilot managed to get out, and they saw that he got back to the Americans, and he actually was then able to say the layout of the dock sides and everything in Saigon, and he actually flew and dropped bombs on it. I mean, that amazed me, because when we were going for our holiday to Vietnam, my husband found photographs from the aeroplanes of them dropping the bombs along there, and I was thinking, well, how on earth did Dad manage to survive? But obviously then I found out a bit later on, because it's like a jigsaw, isn't it? You put it together and bits fit in. This pilot who had managed to escape managed to say where the prisoners were being kept, so that the bombs weren't dropped on those particular go-downs on the dockside. And that's the way I think to myself, that they weren't bombed by because the Americans are a bit known for, friendly fire. So thank goodness that pilot managed to escape. It's interesting, but it's all part of a big jigsaw which we fit together, and the links are there, aren't they? Mm.
Yeah, he must have been one of the few, Barbara, got away.
Absolutely.
Because there was two in my father's camp. They escaped in Sumatra, and they spent weeks in the jungle because they were frightened to talk to the people that lived there in case they give them back to the Japanese. And eventually their condition deteriorated so badly they had no choice, and they went into the village and they asked for help, and they said, "Oh yes, no problem, you have something to eat." And while they were having to eat, the Japanese, one of them had gone and got the Japanese and brought them back. And they took them into the local jail and interrogated them, and they said there were two different people. They said, "Oh, we were sailors and we had actually swam to the shore." So they said, okay, and they accepted that, and then they took them back to the same prisoner of war camp that they'd escaped from.
Oh.
But they were in such a bad condition, the Japanese didn't recognize them.
Goodness me.
Of course, I'd given them false names, so they spent the rest of the war. They couldn't write home. The families didn't know if they were still alive or anything. But eventually they got repatriated. But it was they were lucky. If the Japanese had recognised them, that would have been it for them.
They'd have been beheaded, probably, wouldn't they? In front of all the other prisoners.
Yeah.
I mean, Barbara, I will come next week. Yeah, week after next.
On the 12th.
I'm trying to find. It's not in these two files. It must be in the office. I have on the Russian. Somebody else has got my mouth today. Some articles I got together on the Russian and the Karen and the Nargo because I was interested in them and what happened to them in the war. A bit what they did in the war, but I was more interested in what happened to them just after. How were they helped? But they weren't. Well, 20,000 Chinese stayed behind who'd been with the Chinese army in Burma. They stayed behind and they stayed with the Romushans as part of that group. And so I've got that's about 20,000. Basically, they didn't want to go back because they didn't want to kill their own. And that's how they're being used. They'd be used to kill their own people, and they weren't going to do that. And they basically deserted. It's an article, but there is an organisation. I've sent the money. I know my mum sent the money. That does for is trying to help the Romushans, and for the life of me, I can't think of its name. But it's run by an English woman who's actually out there. Which is a remarkable lady. I think she's about 82 now. But she fundraises for them and everything. I'll bring that information with me when I come over.
That would be lovely. Okay, I'll send you some information and my phone number as well. So if you do get lost, you can ring me up and I'll come and meet you.
He's privileged, Barbara, to have your phone number. You haven't offered me your phone number.
Oh, I'll send you my phone number, Bernard, as well.
Bernard, you haven't offered to go to the meeting in Birmingham.
Jump on the train, Bernard.
Do you ever do any evening meetings, Barbara?
No.
Because sometimes I work in Birmingham, but
right.
I wouldn't be able to go in the day.
No, it is just in the daytime, unfortunately. Okay. But however, having said that, we've got to coordinate. I don't know how many of you are members of COFIPO as well, but there's a COFIPO area coordinator now for the Midlands, and she's trying to get sort of something organised. I don't want to encourage her too much to join ours because a lot of our meetings aren't COFIPO people. But if she may do an evening meeting, and I'll keep in touch with you, Sophie, and if something comes up. I know you're not not in the West Midlands, but she's sort of trying to create interest, and obviously we're the sort of people who've got the interest and can encourage people along. So I don't know if you've been involved, Kevin. I don't know if Leamington comes under this lady area coordinator's remit.
I think it does actually, Barbara. I think I did get the newsletter. I think it is covered by the West Midlands.
Yeah, so she'll probably be in touch with you as well then, Kevin.
Yeah. It's half an hour on the train to Birmingham from Lebanon, so it's not that bad. Like you say, I would never drive there.
No, exactly.
I've driven there once. I got there okay, but I couldn't get out.
No, it's trying to find somewhere to park that doesn't cost an arm and a leg as well. But it's good to meet together and learn about everybody's family. Their father and uncles and that experience, isn't it? And remember these people.
Yeah.
Well, Bernard, you can always jump on the train and come along to our Tuesday meeting. We'd love to see you. Don't come into the December one. The December one is our annual Christmas lunch, and you have to sort of book a place for that. But if you wanted to come along, you would be very welcome.
I'd have to stop overnight, Barbara.
Why not? It's at the Holiday Inn. Next year, we're hoping to do different trips out, one of which may be to the Secret Art of Survival, which will be very good. 2 weeks from now, we'll be there, actually. I'm looking at the sunshine shining out there. At about this time, there's a service on the pier head at Liverpool, so that will be wonderful. And then
you've got sun. Oh, so Bernard's got some sun as well.
We got sun, yeah.
Shines on the righteous. There you go. Up, ho, ho. But yeah, 2 weeks from now, I'm hoping to go to visit the I am going to visit the Art of Survival exhibition. It is, yes, at the VG&M. And I should have, I was invited to go the other Thursday to the official opening, but I couldn't make it. But Keith was there, and Keith has let me know that it's a fantastic exhibition. And one of the schools locally, the school that did the quilt, they made their own quilts, what do you call it? Anyway. No, the one that the women had done.
Patchwork quilt.
That's it. Her school did that, and they've also, I think it's the same school, done a recreation of the bamboo dental chair as one of their A-level works. So that's on display there. Keith Bettany, who I'm sure you've all heard of, his father is an artist. There's work by his father there as well. And he's got a really wry sense of humour. So, some of his artwork's very good. If you don't know about Keith Bettany, then do look him up and there's lots of his artwork online. Very, very good. Keith asked me to take some photographs for him so that a visitor's eye view, you can see what his dad's work looks like. And obviously, there's lots of well-known artists' works there. Chalker's artwork and Ronald Searle's artwork will be there as well. Plus, I know that the Researching FIPO History Group have appealed for people who with artwork that they don't think has been seen publicly to come on board. So there might be some work that we haven't ever seen as well.
I've got some paintings and drawings that my father did. Put away safely. Nowhere. I think I ought to get those out.
You ought to get them out. Come on, Mas. That'll be another one. Another
be really
one
good
of
to
our
see
shows.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. These things are invaluable, I think. To tell the personal story.
Leaves depressed. Oh, I don't know what about it, but one time he made copies of leaves in paper and coloured them, mainly black and dark green. I think there's only two colours here because they get older. I think it's probably Blanco, whatever, and boot polish. But he cut copies of leaves out because he couldn't have leaves because they just rot away. But he put up a copy of. I've got those somewhere as well, which he mounted on a piece of paper. I'll take them out.
That would be interesting, Matt.
I've got too much. I'm just looking these two. Well, I'm in my bedroom because it's where my best computer is. The other computer is in the office, and there's one downstairs because they're all linked up on smart tellies or whatever. But I don't get on with computers these days. But I've got information all over the place and stuff. I really need to stop researching and start sorting, because there's no rhyme or reason to them. It's just like I fill up a file of random things and put it on the shelf and start another one. And I've got to stop doing that.
So it would be really good then, I think, to get like a schedule started of topics that people want to speak about.
Yeah.
You know, and who's doing what when, and maybe try and get a bit more structure to that. I mean, I know obviously these meetings go out on a link, but I think the meetings are only accessible to the members. Is that right?
Yeah, the charity.
No,
the charity members.
You can see it on YouTube actually, because I watched the last meeting, you know, on YouTube.
A lot more people watch them than take part, obviously.
Yeah.
I think the last, not the last meeting, when a couple of meetings ago, there was, I think it was over 1,200 views of it.
Yeah, so I think
considering we're a niche organisation, although GoVPow uses mainly Ronnie's work to come and check some of their facts, and so do other people as well. British Legion also use Ronnie's to check their facts, and Find My Past also use Ronnie. And the Burma Star Association, which I'm hoping that God gets back to me about what's actually happening. It's all up in the sky. No one knows. They've always, we're going to do this. Last time we've done it, and no one's heard anything since. So I'm hoping that Philip will get back to me and tell me what's actually happening on the laying up of the Burma Star flag. I know the Burma Star Remembrance Association, the Burma Star Association, Burma Star Memorial Association is taking over the Burma Star and continuing some of their works, but we're not quite sure what's happening. I mean, there's a couple of groups in Birmingham, Burma Star, mainly made up by the widows of Burma Star people, who are carrying on just with the coffee mornings. Because the Burma Star Birmingham Association had to put up their colours 2 years ago, but a lot of the widows carried on, had their little coffee meetings, and there's quite a few of people who I'm trying to encourage to join either FeedPow or CoughPow or bigger, you know, instead of just keeping to themselves and we're losing that information.
I think that's the key as well, is to get people to actually relate these things. There's so many people have information, great stories, great information, but it's you know, unless people are actually engaging with it, it's lost. And I think it's important to find ways of, you know, they can easily relate that.
Came back from holiday, and we were talking about one of her friends, Sybil, who died last year. And just out of the blue, she said, "Well, of course, Sybil was interned in China." Sorry, when? During the war. She was a child. Oh, I never knew that. And she's been a parents. Her father was in the army, and her mother and herself and her brother and her little sister by the Japanese in Singapore, and then herself and her brother had been sent to China. Left the mother and the baby in Singapore, but her and her brother had been sent to China. I never knew that. And I loved it. I wish I'd known it before, and I can ask her about it, but obviously it's all gone now. I asked her son if he knew, and he went, "Not really. I was aware of it. I don't know the stories." So I wish I'd known. Just something else. That's another facet to the whole story. I know. Oh, Bernie, you're looking slightly serious there.
So Bernard, would you?
No, I was looking at something on the screen, Matt.
So Bernard, would you be able to do a slot on your dad then, of one of these little mini slots?
He's already done
one. Have you already done one? Right, okay.
I think the one that Bernard did was when we did Louise Cordingley's book, The Changi Cross.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was maybe before I joined, which is why I don't know.
A long time. Well, it's not that long ago, but we did originally have sort of some plans because you know, I remember sending Ronnie a whole list of things that I thought we could do. And the book thing was to interview people. So Louise Cordingley came on, and I did a fair bit with Louise on that.
Did a bit on his dad's story.
Yeah, but I think the fact that the Japanese side of it would be a great addendum, really, because your dad is more than just the Changi Cross.
Yeah.
Bernard, obviously.
You did do a slot with me. It was called Meet Bernard.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That wasn't on this video. That was a separate thing that Ronnie did, which is. Oh, I'm going to shut up and go get a brain somewhere.
Ronnie interviewed me.
Yeah, that's right. And
that'd be a good idea, like interviews with people.
Yeah.
That you could just either live or you know, that people can then see. That they think, oh, you know, I'd like to know more about that, and then there might be more people sort of tuning in to, you know, and think, well, actually, I've got a story. I'd like to
interview Martin.
Yeah.
And get about his book. His book's brilliant.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And maybe Ray about his book, A Newborn, as well.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's you know. That we can then focus on and have a discussion about and learn from.
Well, this was what was with the book club. It wasn't just doing the draw. We were hoping that we would get people. I think Martin said that he would do it.
Yeah.
We were trying to get other people who'd written books, you know, to come on. But maybe they're the same as some of the others, that they don't really feel comfortable being on the screen. It's not as terrifying as it thought, because I mean, I missed a few of the videos to start with because I was just a bit nervous and anxious, A, about the technology, and B, about, you know, actually being seen. I've got over that now. I don't care. So what will be will be. What the content is more important than the visual effect, isn't it? So you know,
Barbara, I've been on the TV. I've been in the newspapers. I've been on the radio, and yet where I live, nobody knows who I am. And all that my father done, there's not a mention in my hometown about my father. There's not even a plaque for him.
No.
But my grandfather, yes,
it's a very nice place. But no one knows anything about anybody.
No.
No.
It's all right on the day, and then the next day it's all forgotten.
Yeah. Oh yes, I totally agree. I mean, and that's the sad part of it all, isn't it? Really, that. I think I've got some visitors coming, so I think I'm going to have to nip off and go and see my mum and do that. Anyway, I've enjoyed this meeting because we have chatted informally, and I think we've made some progress as to what we can do in the future too. So you know, thank you all for a really good meeting. I'm sorry to skip out, but I've got some family here. Anyway, be in touch with you. Hopefully see you, Matt. Okay, see you on that Tuesday, perhaps. Yeah. Okay.
Kevin, I'm gonna.
I'll send you some info. Okay. Bye.
Nice seeing you.
I'll email you that information, Barbara.
And you know, you seem to be every meeting, Bernard. You seem to be getting younger.
I'm getting younger.
Must be you've done something to your camera.
I wish I was getting younger, Matt.
It's either that or your wife has got you connected to the meeting. Come on, keep talking.
Do you think my wife was looking? No, I'm safe at the moment, Matt.
Oh, you're safe. Anyway, it's good to talk to you, Bernie. Good to see you looking so well.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Kerry, you're looking good. You are. Your hearing aid's gone wrong. It's good to see you. And I've got somewhere some information that I wanted to send you, Kevin, because you know what we were talking about not a couple of meetings ago, and I said I had something I wanted to send you, and I got something. Well, I've done the stuff with Keith. I remember what it was, and I've got to look through now and get what it is. But every time I see you, I think I've got to.
Yeah, sure. I'll message it, Matt.
Yeah, I've got a memory like I said. I have to keep everything in my diary on a daily basis, otherwise it's gone. Anyway, I'm going to go. So thank you, Sophie, for chairing the meeting.
All right. So I think it's been a good discussion, and I think it's useful to discuss, ideas for things to do for the future.
One of the questions I was going to ask you, actually, Sophie, was thank you for what you did on the ships. Did you actually do the civilian internships, the repatriation ships for the work?
For the civilian internees, you mean?
Yeah. They were sent back to Singapore, and then some of them went to Rangoon, but there's not a great deal of. A lot of them made their own separate ways back to where they come from, but there were civilian internee ships. They brought a lot back.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, but when I was trying to find, if you just bear with me a second, and I'll show you. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. You can see this. Not very clear, but I was trying to find. I was on because I've got an account on Ancestry as well. And I was trying to find see if I could find the ship records actually of the ship I thought my dad came back on, and now know that he did come back on, the Orbiter. And on here there's a couple of pages. It's only a couple of pages, but it lists the ship. But the only records on that are basically people who must have been civilian internees returning, and it's got quite a lot of detail. And there are plenty of other pages. There's a file. I think it's a Q file. I wrote down the link. I can send it to you, Matt, if you want, but but it doesn't have the military personnel. It just has civilian personnel in quite a lot of detail. I'll send you the images if you like.
Okay, great. The reason why I'm asking, Sophie, if you did, is that I had an inquiry a couple of weeks ago about two brothers, one who's quite well known and one who isn't, who'd been interned. They were civilian internees, and they were interned in China, in Shanghai, and they didn't know what happened. They all got split up. The mother, the brothers, and they all got split up and sent to places, except for these two brothers. And he said they never knew what happened to his mother. He'd never been on the ship that brought them back to England, although they'd all been sent back to Singapore for some reason. And they think the mother went on a ship that took her to America, but they don't know. That's the last they ever heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I did notice from going through all the files for the repatriation ships is that a lot of them did contain mixtures of people, military and otherwise, even if they weren't marked as that on that Mansell files collection. So it's something that I flagged up actually to Ronnie, because I said, well, hang on, you just pointed me in the direction of these couple of files, but actually if you start looking through them and just thumbing through it, and there are pages and pages of them, so it's not a task for the faint-hearted, but they're mixtures, and they're just not whoever's actually sort of tagged them as being just a description that's available on that site. It's not all encompassing. So I said, we really ought to go through, and I've started to do that now and sent him some of those, and to actually identify other people on those, and because I've got this stuff that actually came off the Ancestry site, not Find My Past, and there are files at Kew containing all the records, and they're in considerable detail.
On Ancestry, there is lists available, but there's also on My Heritage, I think. Mainly My Heritage is more American bias. There's not much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, 11:30. So I'm going to say thank you all for joining. I'm going to stop the recording, if that's okay with everybody. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thanks, everybody.